County housing study. This conversation had started last year, and Nancy reminded me that we actually had budgeted $5,000 to participate in a countywide housing study. So that is in our current budget for 2017. I sent an email and had a meeting with the county EDA. They've agreed to provide the staff support to get the ball rolling, to get the housing study put together. Hopefully a cooperation between all of the cities and the county, with the county getting some grant money to offset the cost. I'll keep you updated as we learn more about that. And then also this week I did receive an addendum to our agreement with Fluxton. They now have a business retention supplement, which is a local store marketing app. We can make that available to up to 25 of our retail businesses in town to utilize that app, as it would benefit their business. Fluxton indicates it's $11,000 value. There is no cost to us. It would be just an addendum to the contract that we already signed with them. So I need your approval to move forward with that.
The price sounds great.
Yeah.
Right. That's right.
Well, I guess I would entertain a motion to move forward with the Fluxton retention supplement.
I'll make that motion. Second.
All in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. All right, thanks, Teresa.
You're welcome.
On to engineers report, Brandon.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. Two things on the agenda tonight. The first one being the scope of the work at the South Fork subdivision. It has to do with the leaking I&I, or the leaking sanitary sewer contributing to I&I to the system. Talked about it past meetings, so I won't go into the past. I'll maybe move it forward. Myself and Charlie and Tony Bigelow met on site to discuss this situation. We ultimately agreed that something does need to be done. There was some actively leaking manholes and services in the area, so we showed those to Tony and whatnot. So the next thing is we discussed how do we look at tackling this problem. Ultimately, what we came up with was what's in your council packet tonight, which is a letter that I sent to Teresa here, was some observation I&I investigation work that we have scoped out to basically find some of the contributing I&I in the area. And then from there, we will develop a deliverable of a manhole and sewer repair list, kind of a fix-it list, and we will turn that over to the developer to say, all right, developer, it's your responsibility to maintain this public infrastructure. Here's a list of things that we found. Go and fix it, and work with the developer to make those fixes. So ultimately, that's the scope of services. The $5,000 to $6,000 is just for scoping portion of the project to do the manhole observation, the smoke testing, looking at each service location to see which ones are leaking, and then produce the deliverable, the fix-it list to hand over to the developer. So that's the scope of the work proposed. Tony did ask the city if they would be willing to incur the cost of my services to develop the list, and then turn the list over for him to fix at his cost. Was what we discussed out in the field. So again, that's what's before you tonight, looking for some direction on if you'd like us to proceed with this work, or if you'd like us to go back to the developer and say the city's not interested in doing any work to solve your problem, and maybe approach the project a little differently. So,
Lonnie?
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
Okay, say we pay this $5,000 to $6,000. Once that's done, they have a list. Do they have a time limit to do what is to be done? What guarantee do we have that they're actually going to do it? It's actually their property, correct?
Right.
Correct. So two things. One is that's where we'd come back to you as a council and say, all right, here's the fix-it list. How do you want to proceed with the developer? We could put any restriction that you as a council would like to see on that. Or we could look at even asking the developer, you'd like the city to do it as a city project, and either assess the cost back or come up with some other method where we kind of still have our hands on the fix, if you will. So we're not quite there yet. Again, the developer was receptive of doing it, sees that there is a problem, and I told the developer straight up, I said, this is a concern that the city has. We talked about holding up building permits, we talked about holding up other phases, we talked about holding up other subdivisions. They wanted some teeth in here, so they know that they're on notice here to make this fix. So we didn't quite get that because we were going in the right direction, if you will. So let's get the list first and see what the scope is my recommendation, and then from there we'll go on how do we make that fix. So hopefully, if I could continue a little bit here.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
I think that answers number one. Number two, there is a line in here, the second question is, how do we ensure that this is the fix?
Yep.
And that's the other line in here that I have, the proposed approach and assumed future completed repairs, assuming we're gonna make the fixes, is not intended to relieve the developer slash association of the requirements to maintain their private infrastructure. So what, the city administrator Melanie left here a couple meetings ago had some documentation that was already in place that says sort of that same verbiage, and Melanie, jump in if I misspoke there. But they still would have an obligation, in my opinion, to maintain that public infrastructure. And our work here isn't, I&I is very hard to catch and fix, Lonnie, as you probably know. So
Yep.
this is what we felt was a reasonable scope of work to find the actively leaking manholes and service laterals. There's a lot more work that we could do in here that we don't feel is quite appropriate this time. We feel that if we do what we have proposed here, we'll find kind of the smoking guns, the ones that we open the caps up, could see the water physically leaking in. And then let's maybe a year from now go back and look and see how much I&I we have in here and see if we still have a problem, as opposed to just throwing a lot of money at chasing something that may or may not be there. So again, that's where we feel that this scope is getting us in the right direction, but we still, the developer still has an obligation to maintain that infrastructure, so.
What, I don't mean.
Yeah, I was right on the same page with you there, as long as we've got an avenue to follow there, that we get something for our $5,000-6,000.
Right.
And that we've got another avenue, if they didn't proceed it, we could make a project out of it.
Right.
And assess it. So I mean, I just wanted to make sure our backs are covered, we're not gonna spend $5,000 or $6,000 and not get anything out of it, you know?
Well, we're gonna make the fix-it list for the developer and tell the developer to fix it. If not, come to the city and propose something else.
One last question.
Sure.
Okay, if we get this list together, we pay for Bill to get the list together, they decide they're gonna fix it themselves. Will WHKS be involved to oversee their fixes? Because just hear me out.
Mm.
I've seen a lot of fixes that weren't really fixes, they were cosmetic more than anything. You get what I'm saying?
Yep,
I
so
mean,
our
they-
fix-it list will have very specific, fixes within there that a typical, I'm thinking grouting of a sanitary
Yep.
sewers to come up
Yep.
with it on a manhole. It's not just grouting, it's gonna be injection grouting that will make sure that we have a good reputable contractor on board to make those sort of fixes.
Okay.
Some of the service laterals may be the developer fixing them, with like their basement excavator, dig down, re-glue on the 90-degree bends that are
Yep.
broken, leaking in water. So it might be a little bit of developer does some fixes, and city has a little bit more of a thumb on what the fixes are for some of the specialty work. So we would be likely observing that and making sure we're getting a good fix. Or we're just gonna put a flow meter at the end, or start holding up building permits, is what we talked with the
Yep.
developers, so.
And then that's the thing with Charlie a year ago about this, a lot of this is visual. You can see it coming in services that just got a cap on it, you
Yes.
know, so.
Yep.
And that's in our scope of work here,
Yeah.
so.
The thing is, to me, the $5,000-6,000 is probably nil compared to what it's costing us to pipe this water out and treat water that shouldn't be treated in the first place.
You're building.
True?
Oh, yeah.
We're expanding a wastewater plant right now because
Yeah.
of it.
Tank will be up and live here in a couple months, so.
Yep.
It's a big tank, for that reason only. It's the I&I and the amount of rainwater that comes into the system during wet weather, so.
Dan?
Nope.
The $5,000 or $6,000, where do we pull that from?
Well, we do have an engineering budget. I don't know where we are here today with our engineering budget, but I can, fill you in on that at your next meeting.
My other thought, I mean, it is a sewer item, so it could be part of the sewer
That's
enterprise
true.
funds too, so.
Okay. My only comment on it is that, with the $5,000 or $6,000 that we've been paying for the subdivision with that I&I for years. So, but, yeah, I agree with Lonnie that we need something in stone with some teeth, that if they don't get it done, you know, if they come in, they've got 10% of it done and they're at their deadline, that's not getting it done. If they
Right.
come in at 75%, they're at their deadline, you know, we can work with that, but we need something, and then either you guys have a directive with specs of how repairs are made to make sure they're up to the city standards of putting in these developments or whatever.
We didn't get to that point, but that, they're on notice that we're gonna be at that point if we're not, all playing nice in the sandbox here, so.
Right, 'cause I mean, the reason the city will not take that over is because it's not put into the city standards. So, yeah, I mean, I know, we gotta work with them, we gotta get this stuff taken care of, so. So I would say move forward.
Yeah, as long as we have the money for it, I have no issue with it. Doug?
Nope, I think it's the road to go.
We'll save that money just in part of a year of I&I probably.
Probably.
I mean, you look at it that way, we'll make money.
Costs money to treat the water, so.
Yeah.
Unless we're spending there.
Okay, Brandon, you need any?
Nope, just a general motion will be fine, so we'll do it right there, city engineering agreement, that's in place, general city engineering agreement, so.
Okay. So you
Sounds
need-
good.
That motion, I guess, would be nice unless,
Yeah, if you guys anyone wanna entertain a motion and have Brandon move forward with the the scope for South Fork?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same, all right. No, or sorry, I didn't see the second one, go ahead.
yeah, we do have a second item, this is Castle Meadow 6 easement. This is a water main easement for a water main that was constructed last year, the year before. This is that water main loop that comes down from Castle Meadows north of the football field, loops back into the high school, high school, water main, yeah, that runs around the high school there. So that was to increase some water pressure in that area there, so, again, this easement, is agreeable to the developer that still retains that lot. It's more just cleaning up, an easement that we need to have in place for our in-place infrastructure, so.
Looks good to me.
Yep.
Okay, Dan, anything?
Nope.
Something else?
Nope.
All right, I'll entertain a motion for the Cass Meadow 6th easement.
I'll make that motion.
Have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion second, all in favor, signify by aye.
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 Opposed, same. Okay, now on.
And that is it.
Thank you. Now on, I'm sorry, I guess I'm kinda watching the clock to maybe try to catch the next meeting, so. So, nothing for personnel. We're going to we've moved M, correspondence, up to the head of attorney-client privilege. Any discussion on correspondence? If not, we're gonna close the meeting, the attorney-client privilege meeting.
Just have a statement there.
Oh, sorry.
Yep, put on the record.
Okay, the meeting will now be closed to discuss litigation strategy related to the assessment challenges and a dispute with the contractor overpayment for the work done on the library project. We'll close the meeting now.
There, but I want